What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Hump Day, Wednesday, happy Wednesday. Interesting slate on deck with 8 games going on. Looks like we got a good group already in the chat. Things are just happening like crazy over here. What's going on, guys? How's everybody doing today? Should be a good one. I think it'll be a fun one to talk through. Weird slate yesterday with all that messy pitching. Went in all sorts of different directions. Not my best day at DFS, but hopefully somebody out there did fairly well. Hopefully a bunch of you guys did fairly well out there. It looks like we've got a few people talking in the chat about doing pretty well, so that's good. Kevin O says the site's cashing for him. Terry knows his shit. Got to read between the lines. I appreciate that, buddy. Mixed results for me in the last couple of slates, but we'll get it back tonight, I think. I like the shape of this one, so I'm looking forward to getting my entries in. Looking forward to taking some time and building some lineups today and, probably punch out 4:15 start. We'll probably punch out like 5:30-ish. I'm going to try and actually make decent time getting through it, but we'll have our usual fun. Let me say hi to Podegen Stoner, Wake and Bake DFS Baseball from Garden City, Colorado. Says he almost got that new bar cycle pick, just needed the triple in the home run. Yeah, nearly got there. Decent return on Jock Market, though. That's good to hear. Goat cheese, indica, or sour cookies, sativa. You know I'm always the sativa. The sativa choice is for me. Keeps me uppy, keeps me peppy, helps me talk my way through some of this stuff. The indica stuff, it would just be nap time, really. That's a lot of, not completely. I do enjoy some indicas, but and that's typically what we always got around here. But I just prefer the uppiness, the energy, or whatever that comes with the typical sativa strains. Calvin Dunn's in the chat. We've got Kevin O, who we mentioned a second ago. Larry's here. What's up, Larry? Matt Tomlinson's here. Lone Wolf saying hit the like button. I appreciate that. Definitely hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed up already. As Lone Wolf says, we're delivering free content. It's the least you guys can do. I agree that I'm delivering free content. The least you guys can do is just show up and hang out. You hit the like button, I'm sure somewhere along the line it helps me, and I appreciate it. And always helps me when I go back and check the numbers from time to time, and it looks, it's just nice to see some people liking the show and everything. But if you don't hit it, you don't hit it. The least you can do is show up and just hang out with us. Have a good time. Enjoy your life. Build yourself some winning lineups. That's the least you can do. Tim Evans says indica all the way. All right. Timmy's on the other side of that one. Podegen's looking for an indica kind of a slate. All right. So does that just mean like a relaxing slate that you don't have to think too much about? You get to enter your lineups, get a little couch lock going, and just like watch some baseball? Like, how are we defining our difference between our sativa slates and our indica slates then? Now I'm kind of curious. Could be Travis says he misses when he could watch the show at home with all his stoner homies. Just not the same when he's at work in Camp Puff. Love it. Trey says, if it's just me and my tolerance is to do sativas, but don't do for me like they do for y'all. It's indica only for me. Okay. Gummies for Steven Leibowitz. Is turning it into an interesting show already. We've talked about my weird tolerance for edibles and gummies and stuff that drives me bananas. I wish I could partake of those a little bit more. Josh Plays DFS is here. What's going on, bud? Long day. Time to unwind with some good baseball talk and a bowl. We've got a real theme going here. Black Man says, forget about yesterday. Yep, already have, buddy. That's where the goldfish memory comes in handy. I couldn't tell you a lot of the results without actually going back and checking them right now, so it definitely helps. Could be Travis says, doing good. Thanks for asking. How's your day going? My day's going pretty well, Trav. Let's, honestly, I slept in. I kept on hitting the snooze button, going like, just going again and again on the snooze. Slept in a little bit, just saying, hey, it's 8 o'clock, or it's an 8 o'clock. I saw somebody in the chat, as I was saying that, said, Greg B. and Cohn said, when's Joker's dinner time? So 8 o'clock came out of my mouth. What I meant was 8-game slate. So I kept saying, I can get to it. I can sleep in a little bit. Didn't realize I was going to have a data pull issue with Fangraphs. They added a consistent header to all their pages. So it's completely screwed up my data pulls. So it took me a while to get everything together. So we're a little bit behind, little frantic on the day. But overall, yeah, good day. Thank you for asking, pal. Let's see. Who do we not say hi to yet? Fanatics here. 3 or 4 games, indica, 12 games, sativa. All right. That's a good way to look at it. I like that. Jenna Sandy, asks Terry, you're going to do NFL too? Jenna, absolutely. We're going to be doing some NFL content. I haven't exactly figured out how we're going to be presenting things. We may finally get around to putting a pay format in for if there's actual projections going up. I don't totally know. But you can absolutely at least rely on some shows and some written content at the worst, and some rankings, kind of like I'm doing for baseball at the least. And we're going to try and pump it up from there. So we'll see what happens. Mamba's here. Mamba says, I hope you and Gunn team up, because if not, I may retire from DFS. Well, we'd love to keep that from happening, Mamba. So that's another impetus for teaming up with Gunn. But yeah, I'd love to do that. I know he's looking to, maybe not be as in depth as what his current stuff demands, given his wrestling and everything. We talked about that the other day. So he and I have to connect and figure out how it might work. But I would love to do that. Obviously, it would be a good boost for everything, being able to add even more of his team in an official capacity, his team of members and followers and everything. Greg asks, am I the only person in America who gets drug tested for work? I'm at work right now. This is work for me. Or actually, no, this is pleasure for me, especially since I'm not making any money off of doing the content and stuff. But technically, this is my job. I gave myself a full-time job by accident by starting up the website, but it's been fun. I love doing it. Who else is in here? Somebody else. There's other folks in here. I'm struggling with the mouse at the moment. Copy and Content LLC. Does anyone notice Terry is attractive? I doubt anybody's noticed that out there, but thank you for saying that, Copy and Content LLC. Welcome to the show. Good to see you here. Let's see what else is going on. I think we've said hi to pretty much everybody hanging out. Larry says you could always hire Randone. I heard his YouTube channel has tons of subs. Randone. All those Bachelor folks following Chris Randone still, probably. I'm sure he had a bunch of pull from something like that. I did a couple shows with him back in the day over at Awesomeo at the time. Was friendly enough, but yeah, obviously had some weirdness going on, and then that whole scandal that he got into. We're glad Terry's not being drug tested stream by stream by stream. Nice. All right, let's dive into this one, gang. No fooling around. Let's take a look at the board. I think another good place to start again is the pitching slate. This is a deep pitching slate. Compared to the mess that we had yesterday, would have been nice if a few of these guys had pitched yesterday. We have a 4-man group projected within 2 fantasy points of the top, really like a 1.5 of the top, that's comprised of 4 ace caliber pitchers, premium options, and then Kevin Gausman, who I do know is projected at the top of boards on other sites, is sitting just below that group, another 2 points behind for a very high price. Any of those guys are essentially the same. The most limited one is probably going to be Clay Kershaw, just because he's got an innings cap. That 32 that you're seeing on the board there, FanDuel scoring, of course, that's a 5-inning projection. He went 5, faced, I think, 18. We'll talk about it, but he went 5 in the first start back. I think he's going to be capped like 75, 80 pitches again, like 5 innings again. The ceiling is probably a little limited, but I think the realistic, projection is around that level. So I think Kershaw's in play because he's probably going to be really low owned given those high prices. But he's probably the lowest ceiling out of those guys. These are around, these are just reading the chat real quick. Every now and then I glance this way over here and my eyes just get pulled over to the chat and distracted. But yeah, so Kershaw's the lowest ceiling out of those guys. Gausman's got obviously a very high ceiling, even with that more limited by 2 points projection. And then you get into a pool of Charlie Morton, Aaron Nola, both of whom are underpriced for their talent, underperforming in moderate ways, but not tragically so for either one of those pitchers. Morton's got a great matchup against the Yanks. Nola not as much against the Blue Jays, but the Blue Jays haven't been a lead either this year. So either one of those guys, if they hit the slate on form, could pay off value-based pricing. John Gray hasn't been great this season, but he's good enough, and he's really, really cheap on DK at $6,900. Reed Detmers has been kind of backsliding over the last little bit. Difficult matchup against Texas. 26 puts him in the mid-board, but he's mid-board priced. It's not like he's priced up. Same with Dean Kramer going up against the top-heavy Padres. Priced in the middle, I think both of those guys are going to be in play, especially on DK, where you're just going to be limited by wanting to get to all those high-priced guys. There's not a lot of good value-based pitching on DK today. Mackenzie Gore is dicey against Boston. He's been backsliding quite a bit. He's down at 6,000, but a really tough spot. And then you can see it kind of falls apart around all of the sub 6K guys or the sub 7K guys. Assad, Clevenger, Vasquez, Wade Miley, Alec Marsh as a follower gets really, really dicey down there. So I think we've got a deep pool, but it's an expensive pool, particularly on DK where you got to combine two of these guys. I do really like the price at 8,200 for Paxton. That's helpful for the DK slate. Everybody else being in the 10s and 9s is makes it a challenge over there. But I think there's a ton of really good options. Jake Swales is here. Jake Swales says, leave my boy Wander alone. All right. Jake is out on an island with Wander Franco. Wander Franco may not be able to go back to the island that he originally came from, given what seems to be developing charges-wise over there, too. That's not so good. Kevin O says, long as don't hire one. Okay, that's part of the Wander conversation we don't need to dig into too much. Stephen Leibowitz says, 6 righties in the Sox lineup, and the lefties are Devers, Verdugo, and Casas. Yeah, that's problematic, huh? That's a good spot. I like that spot. We'll get into it. By the way, Joker's dinner time is usually around 5 when I'm on shows, 5:30, 6 o'clock, depends when we get off. But today I gave him food before the start of the show, hoping that he might chill. He's been a little hyper. He's right here. He's just kind of hanging out. He's been kind of quiet. He's been a little forceful with making me scratch his head, but he's here. He's chilling. Mike Palm says, hello, Roto Scouts. Terry, thanks for the great advice. You're welcome, Mike. Thank you for showing up, buddy. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe so you know when we go live if you haven't already. But welcome to the show, man. I appreciate that. And I hope it's paying off for you. Dimitri's here. I know we've paid off for Dimitri a couple times. That's great. Love seeing D here. Shannon Lambert says Epstein Island. Not quite, but he was trying to make it that way, it seems like. Anyway, let's slide on over. We'll start digging into the game-by-game stuff. By the way, if anybody's ever wondering what's over here, this is just a list of the games where it pulls some of the data from. I think this is actually old data. I don't even know where that pull is from. Where's this pull from? Team hitting it. Yeah, I think that's an old tab. So none of this is consequential to anything that happens in the stuff that we look at. I'm not hiding data over there was my point. If anybody was just wondering why we start in the M's and the N's. All right, pal. Go lay down. All right, 8 games. Let's get into this thing. Lefty-lefty matchup. 2 very different lefties, though. Mackenzie Gore had a good start to his season, but like I said, he's really backslid over the last few months. He's down to a 4.62 ERA. 3.95 xFIP is just barely staying respectable underneath that ERA. 26.7% strikeouts is still good, but 10% walks is too many. He's given up a 4.19% home run rate on 12% barrels, 90 miles an hour of exit velo, 4.49% home runs. Not keeping the ball down effectively. Putting too many guys on base against a Red Sox team that is good at sequencing, good at getting on base, and good at hitting for power. It's really, really dicey for Mackenzie Gore. He's 6,000 on the DK slate. If you wanted to throw a few, and I mean a few, value-based darts at it as an SP2, I do think he's at least in that conversation, just given the dearth of options at SP2 when we talk about those below 7,000 guys. He obviously projects out higher than that group of 3 or 4 pitchers that were at the very bottom of the slate that had the green salary levels. At 8,200 on the FanDuel slate, it's a stretch. I just don't like the danger spot against the Red Sox. Of course, he could succeed. He could find some strikeouts here, but they're not a high strikeout bunch on the whole. Most of their best hitters are low strikeout guys. Their premium power guys are a little bit higher. Oh, we do have a... oh, no, there's Devers. Sorry. For some reason, I jumped over Devers in the lineup. I was about to say, Devers is missing, but he's not. He's right there. 3-hitter, as usual. 5,300, 3,500, too cheap for Rafi Devers, as we've talked about a bunch of times. I just care about the power. I care about the premium contact, the home runs, the ISO. If he was hitting for a little bit better average, getting on base a little bit more, creating a couple more runs, it would be great. I don't really care that much that he's not. I'm just taking Rafi Devers at the discount. Lefty-lefty, I don't sweat in this spot with that hitter. It's fine. Rob Refsnyder, excellent in the leadoff role. I'll answer that in just one sec, Usman. Welcome to the show. At Rob Refsnyder in that leadoff role against lefties, that's where he belongs. It's been when they were hitting him third, I was arguing with it. He's a journeyman. He's a utility guy. When people get way over the top, I argue with it. But as a on-base correlated scoring option against lefties, he's excellent. 149 plate appearances against lefties. in his plate appearances against lefties. I didn't mark the number. Overall, he's got a 100 WRC plus, which is league average, but against lefties, he's got a 149. He's slashing 330, 455, 418, but he's got only a .088 ISO. So that's just illustrative of he's really good at getting on base in the split, good at putting the ball in play, but he doesn't deliver power. He doesn't deliver individual upside. So he needs help from his friends. Quite likely to, maybe draw a walk, hit a couple singles, get himself on base, maybe doubles even. He's got doubles level ability to drive the ball from time to time. But really, a guy we're looking for, 3 singles, score me 2 runs, and just correlate with these guys. That's what we get from Ref Snyder. Justin Turner's having a great year. 285, 351, 483. Looks a lot like Justin Turner historically. 46, 33 is cheap for him. It's cheap for anybody with these numbers. That's a good season from Justin Turner for power and for run creation for the triple slash on the whole. Devers 337 on base is non-tragic. I know the WRC is down, like I said, and I would like him to be in the 350 range for on-base percentage, but that's quibbling when it's Rafael Devers. Trevor Story 4,500, 3,200, second base and shortstop, highly, highly valuable. No homers in his 24 plate appearances yet, but 318, 375, 500 in the tiny sample, 37% better than average creating runs in the tiny sample, 21.4% barrels, 64.3% hard hits. I feel like he's just right back on form, putting the bat on ball well in the very, very small, completely meaningless on the whole 24 plate appearance sample. Adam Duvall, tons of power, 4,000, 3,000, 11 homers, a 267 ISO, 17% better than average creating runs over 215 plate appearances, 13.3% barrels. Excellent option there. Verdugo, a good option, lefty hit tool specialist, gets himself on base. What I like about Verdugo is he's got a pretty decent chance to get on base and provide a correlation option with Tristan Casas, who's hiding down here at 4,100, 3,000. When we looked at Casas the other day, I believe he was crushing against lefties. I'll pull it back up. One of these days I'll build the splits into this dashboard somewhere so it's just easier to pull. Casas gets most of his power. Oh, no. Casas is not good against lefties. All right. 180, 324, 361. I was thinking of somebody else. A 180 ISO, 189 WRC plus. So he's not put bat on ball well in same-handed matchups. That said, 4,100, 3,000 for his power. If they chase McKenzie early, we get Tristan Casas for cheap hiding down lineup. 19 homers, 228 ISO on the season. Who was I mixing him up with? Nolan Jones, maybe? I know we looked at somebody. I feel like it wasn't Jones, though. There was another lefty that we looked up the other day that I was like, oh, wow, he's actually better than I thought against lefties. I thought it was Casas, but it's not. Anyway, I really like Casas regardless. If I can get him cheap and low owned, the fact that they put him in the lineup shows what they think of the pitcher. He might go out there. He could go out, draw 2 walks against McKenzie, given a 13.7% walk rate. Get himself on base. He's got a 355 on base. Be a correlated scoring option over the first 3 innings, 4 innings, and then they chase Gore. And then you've got I called him McKenzie. Either way. They chase Gore, and you've got a cheap Tristan Casas with no ownership on him. So I do like the play. National side of things, they are definitely better against left-handed pitching, but James Paxton projects his way through it. Over 80 in the third innings, 15 starts. He's excellent, 27.4% strikeout rate, 3.58 xFIP, a 3.36 ERA. 3.65% home runs is a little up. The contact is not exactly where I would want it, especially with the Nationals' demonstrable ability to put bat on ball against lefties. But I believe that there's talent here against left-handed pitching. It's undeniable this season. There's still some fairly small double-digit type samples around guys like Stone Garrett, Riley Adams, who's not in the lineup. I don't know how much I still, even to this point, I fully put that much stock in it. And especially against a high-end lefty, a high strikeout lefty. They're good at limiting strikeouts in the split. I will absolutely give them that. And they rank, the hell is it? Very highly for WRC plus. 8th ranked, 114 WRC plus against lefties. Strikeouts at 19.6% against lefties. CJ Abrams hasn't been good against lefties. Just a 68 WRC plus, 195, 283, 327 in 129 chances. Lane Thomas, their best player overall. Against lefties, 165 WRC plus and a 261 ISO with 8 of his home runs in 154 plate appearances. That's a good hitter against lefties. I believe that one. Joey Meneses, decent hit tool, mid-grade power overall, only 2 homers, a 287, 331, 426 triple slash against lefties, 4% better than average creating runs. That's okay. It's basically who he is against either hand. Keibert Ruiz, a guy that we like to focus on for cheap, low-owned catcher power, 115 WRC plus in the split, but only a 139 ISO, and only one of his home runs came against lefties. As a righty hitter, he's been better in same-handed matchups, surprisingly. Switch hitter. He's been better from the other side of the plate. 4,100, 2,800, the price is good, but only one of the 14 homers has come as a righty against a lefty. Stone Garrett facing lefties. Is a 125 WRC plus, 6 of his home runs in only 131 plate appearances, and a 239 ISO. So most of Stone Garrett's damage, 6 of 7 home runs, have come on this side of splits. He's more of a platoon-focused guy. So you do like Stone Garrett in the mix here. Dom Smith has been bad against both hands. I wasn't actually expecting him in the lineup, so I didn't look up his splits. But I just don't like going to that hitter overall. Overall, a .081 ISO, a 92 WRC plus, 5 homers, 268, 341. Okay at getting himself to first base, but we're looking for more than that from this hitter. Illuminato Vargas has been good against lefties in limited fashion. 277, 309, 523, 246 ISO, 3 home runs in only 68 plate appearances. Alex Call, 110 WRC plus, but a 140 ISO and 127 against lefties. And who else we got? Michael Chavis. Michael Chavis, around a 200 ISO. I didn't bother to look up if it's still 200 or if it slipped to like 198 or whatever. But over his career in weird short seasons where he never gets full chances, has been fairly effective against lefties. But James Paxton is one of those guys. It's, there are lefties and then there are lefties. And Paxton came right back after a couple years being out of the game with injuries as one of those premium lefties. So I greatly prefer the Paxton side. Greatly prefer the Red Sox side. Only small value darts of Mackenzie Gore on DK as an SP2. No real love for him on FanDuel. Mix and match options for the National stacks. I will have some Nationals value. They're very cheap, and they do have the numbers that they have against lefties this year. So there's a little bit of reason to go to them. But if everybody goes to them as like their contrarian option du jour, expecting them to deliver another great game against a lefty, it limits the appeal. Like if they're the most popular of the contrarian teams, I don't know how much that buys us. So James Paxton, since it's so tight at the top of the pitching board, I'll actually put the Red Sox on top. I'll go Red Sox, James Paxton, Nationals, Bats, Mackenzie Gore in the ranking. Phillies, Blue Jays. Let's see what's going on in the chat. Steven Leibowitz says, bad news happens in threes. Tampa's had the Franco news. McClanahan going under the knife so far, so there's one more coming. And get knocked out in like the wild card game or something. Does that count as bad news? I just remembered I got to drop my placeholders in while we're chatting about this. Did you guys see the list of Rays pitchers? Somebody sent it out on Twitter last night, or X. The list is ludicrous. There's like 10, 12 guys on it of Rays pitchers who have gone for Tommy John or blown out their UCL over the last 3 years, just since 2020. It's a crazy list. Actually, hang on. I think I can read it. Now I'm going to a text message so that I can read this list instead of inserting the placeholder lineups like I said I was going to do while we're talking about this. But since 2020, according to this tweet, I didn't verify it. Shane McClanahan, Jeffrey Springs, Drew Rasmussen, Shane Baz, Brendan McKay, Jalen Beeks, Yoni Chirinos, Colin Posh, Andrew Kittredge, and Nick Anderson. That's a long list of starters with elbow issues. It sounds right. Anyway, let me get these placeholders in. Mamba's asking Shannon Lambert, is Kramer the SP2? Kramer's an interesting one. I think he's playable. We'll get there. I know you were asking Shannon. I'm just trying to chime in so that I can keep on talking while I drop this stuff in here. Yes, enter. Nick Navoa says Clayton Crenshaw. I like that. Yeah, I think Clay's on the board, if that's what you're asking. Yeah, Steven, that's actually a good point. The Casa sample against lefties is only in 74 plate appearances. He was not doing well, but you're right. He was not playing against lefties originally. So, yeah, the fact that they're rolling him out there is encouragement enough. And like I said, the combination of Gore's high... Mackenzie Gore. I keep bouncing between his first name and his last name, of Gore's high walk rate and Casas' ability to draw a walk. Just that alone is playable enough. When he's down lineup, he won't be popular, and he's way too cheap for his power potential later in the game. And it's not like he couldn't connect for a homer against Gore. 1 second. A couple more lineups in. There we go. To answer Usman, I am not still with Osimo. It's been a little while now. Started the baseball season. I started up rotoscouts. It's my own site. Everything up there is free. If you haven't been to the website, it's rotoscouts.com. Follow the Twitter handle. This goes for everybody, by the way, not just Usman. Follow the Twitter handle at rotoscouts if you can. Do me a favor and let's build that thing up. We've been building up followers gradually, but definitely helps out when you guys can like the tweets when I send it out with the articles and the rankings and everything. The more you like those, retweet those or whatever, the more the word spreads, and we just grow a little bit organically without having to force anything. But yeah, it was a gradual parting of the ways. It was a first stopped working behind the scenes doing the customer support role, Usman, and then was gradually just kind of doing less and less content, and then just kind of a light falling out with some management type folks. But no hard feelings. Still like those guys. Everybody who does content, I still would consider a friend. They'd be welcome to crash. I'd love to have a beer with any of them if they're watching, and I hold no ill will toward the stochastic folks, and I'm not being sarcastic, whether you spell that with a K or a C. Kevin O says Tampa Bay is crashing. Trey says, I don't think they throw enough either, but that's another story. What are we talking about? Stephen Leibowitz says Chavis revenge game. I had a note about Trevor's story. He's running when he gets on. Is that what we're talking about? Larry says Terry trying to be Switzerland. No, I mean it. I mean, I'm not one to hold grudges and like carry stuff like that or care about stuff like that. Honestly, like I've told you guys, like following this guy from this site doesn't like that guy from that site, and they're gonna have a push-up competition or they're gonna get in the octagon and fight or whatever. Like, who cares? Same with the Elon Musk and fucking Zuckerberg fight. Who cares? Do we not have more important things to worry about than two assholes fighting? I could go outside and watch that somewhere in Jersey City. I don't need it to be those two rich assholes. And come on, what's the quality of that fight going to be? If any of you guys buy that fight on pay-per-view, if it happens, you're fucking fired. That's just don't want it. Anyway, Phillies Blue Jays. Excellent pitching matchup here. Kevin Gausman, peak of his powers, 32.5% strikeout rate, leads the board, 139 innings in 23 starts, 6% walks, 2.91 xFIP, a 3.04 ERA. Ikeliu says, don't be a grumpy old man. I think that's the first time Ikeliu's ever chimed in to say that. Hey, get off my lawn. Look, you're into what you're into, and if you're a fight fan, whatever, maybe it floats your boat. But yeah, I just never had the patience for that stuff. I'm terrible with like remembering who people are and names and stuff like that anyway. So the limited bandwidth that I have in my head, I want to remember these names that we're talking about and like, you know, the relevant stats and stuff, rather than dude from Roto Grinders hates the dude from Run Pure DFS, and because, you know, he once didn't pay off a fantasy league debt or a bet or whatever. I'm like, who cares? Anyway, Trevor Bauer talks about it a lot. Did he make it back up to the major league level of the NPB, or is he still pitching in NPB AAA? I haven't been following him. I see him pop up every now and again on Twitter. Trey says we're all going to die anyway, so none of it matters. Exactly. All right, so Gausman, obviously a very strong option. He projects just below that group. Just the Phillies give it a little bit of a ding. Similar story for the Blue Jays going up against Aaron Nola. He could project a little bit better if he was facing like either one of these pitchers would be easily leading the slate against the Royals. But Gausman in particular was just a couple points behind that quartet of pitchers at the top of the board, and has probably the highest overall ceiling on the slate, given the highest strikeout rate overall, and given just how good he's been. And he's been this good he's out pitching the last couple of years, but he's been excellent for several seasons now. 29.3% strikeouts in 2021, 28.3 last year, 3.35 ERA, a 2.76 xFIP. Year before, 2.81 ERA, 3.28 xFIP. Very low walk rates, outstanding swinging strike rates. He's actually taken a little dip in the swinging strike rate, surprisingly, but the strikeout rate has gone up. So throwing a couple more called strikes in the mix, I guess. Although 29.8 is an exact match for the CSW. So yeah, he's gaining a few called strikes where he was getting swinging strikes last year. Couple more barrels in play, couple more hard hits in play. Has not really cost him in the home run spot. So I'm not really worried about anything with Gausman. I think worst case scenario, you get dinged, for a couple of runs, but the opportunities for Philly to really go out there and light them up are probably pretty few and far between. And they're also sitting at a 3.48 implied total. Toronto on the other side of 4.11. This looks like a pitching spot for me. I think you can go to shares of either one of these teams. They've obviously got very good players on both sides in both lineups, and they're at fairly affordable prices. So I do think a few shares of Philly stacks, a few shares of Blue Jay stacks is fine. Not directly targeting either one of the pitchers by any means, but just, hey, these are good players at fair prices. I do want to have them in the mix a little bit. On the Nola side of the equation, he's very cheap. Has a relatively similar projection, few points off the leaders, but very okay enough projection, a good projection on other slates. So depending on the nature of the slate, that's a good to very good projection, and obviously an upside to a similar ceiling as any of these other pitchers on the slate. He's been down overall this season, not pitching like himself overall, but okay in a lot of ways. A 3.79 ER xFIP is well up from his 2.77 last year, but it's still okay. It's not Aaron Nola, but it's okay. It's effective for those prices. A 4.49 ERA, definitely higher than we wanted. He was at 3.25 last year. It's higher than the xFIP by, another 2/3 of a run. He's giving up 4.28% home runs on 8.1% barrels. Last year, that was 2.35 on 7.1 and only 31.6% hard hits. This year, 36.5 on the hard hits. Walking a few more hitters, but that's kind of incidental. It's kind of similar to 2 years ago with the walk rate. But the strikeouts being down about 4 points is a little bit, is where some of the problems kind of come in around the edges. But again, for a pitcher with a 25% strikeout rate and just these numbers, just for these numbers, maybe the home runs are a little bit of a concern. But getting him when he projects out okay at these prices, I don't really sweat what the numbers have been this year. That's why we're getting him at those prices. So I think Nola's easily on the board. Very, very playable. Blue Jays have been up and down this season. A lot of underperformers, a lot of talent, but a lot of underperformers like Vladdy Guerrero and George Springer, the two biggest culprits. But Dalton Varsho, definitely underperforming his expectations. Alejandro Kirk has been in and out of the lineup. He's got 6 home runs, 305 plate appearances. No Danny Jansen in the lineup with his home run power, so you lose a little bit of pop from what I had in the projected. You get Kevin Biggio with 8 homers and a 221, 316, 387. I could easily see Nola just carving up this part of the lineup. You get through this part, you carve this part up a couple times, and you're putting together a pretty clean fantasy score. Top of the lineups where the issues could be. Whit Merrifield, a good on-base option, good correlated scoring play, 304, 349, 432, creating runs 17% better than average. 11 homers, doubling that in stolen bases with 22. No real power to speak of in terms of his premium contact, but has always been capable of delivering double-digit home runs and good line drive power, if nothing else. He's up to 11 this year. He had 11 last year. He had 10 the year before with 40 steals. This is just kind of another good Whit Merrifield season. So he's in play. If you're going to Blue Jay stacks, he's one of the priorities. He's cheap. He helps you pay for Vladdy and Springer. These are the priorities, though, in a Blue Jay stack. And then on DK, you probably go to Alejandro Kirk. If you wanted to mix and match like a Brandon Belt out of there on FanDuel, maybe you're going to Dalton Varsho for a cheap outfield price. Maybe you just use Kevin Biggio at second base for $2,300. It was really limited given this back end. Belt has been really good, 3,500, 3,000 at first base. Always got the decision point with Vladdy. That just renders the ownership on both players a little bit off where it probably should be if they had him at if they had a DH spot or if they gave Belt back his outfield eligibility that he had earlier in the year that was very valuable. He's got 11 homers. He's created runs 31% better than average on the year. Very good hitter. Still draws his walks. Strikes out way too much. That could feed a little bit of strikeout upside for Aaron Nola. But you do have to deal with low strikeout rate, low strikeout rate, low strikeout rate. Kirk's low strikeout rate is fine, but a more non-threatening hitter. Similar story with Santiago Espinal down toward the bottom. So it's really the guys who are creating runs above average are the priorities. The guys who are below average are not the priorities, but they're mix-ins. Kind of straightforward with the Blue Jays. On the Phil side, I definitely would want to grab Kyle Schwarber's power upside. Gausman's got him cut down below the magic number, but still pushing a 9.46. Everybody else on the team below 5. That just shows how distinct his power output is. 14.5% barrels, 46.1% hard hits. We know about the flaws, but we know about the pluses as well. 240 ISO, 30 home runs. That's what we're chasing with Schwarbs. Alec Bohm maybe gives a little bit of frustrating base hit ability. Puts the ball in play 3 times against Gaussman here. Gets himself on base. Helps the team sequence, capitalize on it because there's he's not great for allowing too many home runs. So maybe he's a path to success for the Phillies at 4,400 at 3,000. Multi-position on both sites at first and third base. I just like the option. I like that spot in the batting order for him. 284, 337, 426. Productive hitter. Nice little breakout season. Harper and Castellanos are the power core right now. Harper's got 7 homers, 134 ISO, but we know he's Bryce Harper. I think the elbow's still hampering him in terms of the power delivery, but it's coming around a little bit. He's accelerating the power pace a little bit, still making excellent contact with 13.2% barrels, 44% hard hits. So I think the power comes around. Castellanos has 20 homers on the season. Bryson Stott's got 11 with 23 steals. Trey Turner's got 12 with 22 steals, and JT Realmuto's got 15 with 12 steals. This is an interesting little group for DFS purposes. Stott, Trey Turner, who's underperforming, still expensive on DK, cheap on FanDuel, and Realmuto, where you need a catcher especially. I think this group has sneaky value for DFS purposes. They're all familiar names. You're not surprising anybody with those names in your lineup. It's not, holy hell, why'd this guy play that guy? But I think they go under-owned a lot, and I think they're a fair play in the middle of the lineup when you're going to Phillies. Probably more depth on the Phillies side of the equation. This is a decent 7-man group, and then Jake Cave, on Rojas mix and match parts at the bottom. But I like these 7 better than I like like these 4.5. Maybe if we want to put Kirk and Varsho together, it's 5. More depth on the Phillies side, but a tougher matchup against Gaussman. Kevin Gaussman, Aaron Nola, Phillies bats, Blue Jays bats. 4 corners in play, but the bats are light. The bats are just like I said, just getting good hitters in mix in prices to fill out some lineups. Trey says the bat has 1 and 2, Snella and Gaussman. Yep, makes a ton of sense. Steven says Terry said with bat around 5:30. Who else is taking the over? You always take the over, as Larry says. Absolutely. Yeah, I just get sidetracked. Enjoy talking to you guys, so it is what it is. I'll sacrifice a couple chuckles for or a couple moments of lineup building for a couple chuckles along the way. Let me grab the Yanks lineup here and get into this one. We do have a couple spots that we can kind of more breeze through for pitching too later in the slate. Fortunately, because otherwise I'd still be writing that article. Yanks with DJ in the leadoff spot. That's interesting. At least it's not IKF. He's hitting 5th today. That's weird. So we get Billy McKinney and no Jake Bowers. And we get IKF. I'd rather have Jake Bowers and IKF if we just want lefties. Aaron Boone being Aaron Boone stuck the 2 lefties back-to-back in the heart of his lineup with the wrong one hitting 5th. The change the Yankees need to make is clear to me. It's in the manager spot. Or at least one of the many changes the Yankees need to make. LeMahieu, terrible season. 242, 318, 373, and 92 WRC+. Glaber's a playable second baseman. Judge is a superstar with massive power on any given slate. Monumental upside on any given slate. Pushing a 27, almost 28% barrel rate, 63.6% hard hits, best contact profile in the league among regulars, a 181 WRC plus, 22 home runs in only 285 plate appearances, a 339 ISO. He's still very much Aaron Judge, despite everybody else around him kind of disappointing. Glaber's having an okay year. Glaber's at 112 WRC plus. I don't want to undersell Glaber's production. Stanton still puts bat on ball pretty well. He's very cheap for his ceiling. 2,900 is just too cheap on FanDuel. 4,200 just too cheap on DK for a guy who's still got 15.7% barrels, 18 home runs, and 286 plate appearances, a 246 ISO. He's still an excellent power hitter. IKF, slap hitter, inconsistent, puts the ball in play from time to time. 6% below average creating runs, no power to speak of. Billy McKinney, a little bit of lefty pop for 24-23 across sites in the outfield. He's probably the 4th most interesting hitter in this group. Although DJ's correlation at least and triple position eligibility on the FanDuel slate is helpful. IKF for 23 with triple position at least is a mixer in just the configuration of stacks. Bottom of the lineup with Bader, Volpe, and Higgy. All three can deliver a little bit of potential, a little bit of upside on any given slate, but they're all wildly and maddeningly inconsistent. Volpe leads the group with 16 homers and with 20 stolen bases. Bader's got 7 and 14. Higgy's just a power hitting catcher, 10.8% barrels, 47.5% hard hits. He leads the group in both of those categories, but inconsistent output, a 149 ISO, 7 home runs and 209 plate appearances. It's a bad Yankees squad. And they're going up against Charlie Morton, 85-91. Charlie projects out just as well as those other veteran pitchers on the slate today. I think Charlie's got realistic upside, at least realistic ability to deliver around this kind of a score for the money. And at 8,500, 9,100, he's cheap for his talent overall. 23.9% strikeouts, that's good. 3.71 ERA, that's good. 4.37 xFIP is a little high, but 2.29% home runs, 88.6 miles an hour of exit velo are both good. 11.4 walks is a little bit concerning. 1.46 whip. The walks are up. The strikeouts are down. The ERA is down, but that's inconsequential. The xFIP is a little high for Charlie Morton. Another guy, kind of like Nola. He's older. He's on the back end of his career, and that's not like Nola, but kind of like Nola, just a guy who we've got a long track record of success with. Any given slate upside for sure. And just underperforming who we expect him to be. With Charlie, it makes a little sense, given the more advanced age, obviously. He's probably just aging out of the league at this point. But still effective enough going up against this weak-ass Yankees team. I think there's plenty of ceiling for Charlie Morton on this slate. Maybe not the best overall option, but probably also not the most popular overall option. And he comes at a bit of a talent discount in terms of the price. So I like the spot for Charlie. I think you can grab some Yankees, grab the top of the lineup, mix in some Billy McKinney, maybe some Bader and Volpe shares, some Higgy shares, but not a spot to go get carried away with in terms of the Yanks. They've got value. They're very cheap. I'll give them that, especially when you get a guy like Stanton at those prices. So they do rank 4th for points per dollar value, 2nd for points per dollar value on DK. They've got a 5th rated home run spot and a 7th, so like mid-board in terms of the fantasy point projections. They're just wildly unreliable. It's just difficult. And Charlie's a good pitcher. So I prefer the Morton side of it. I will have some Yanks. And then you get the Braves going up against Randy Vasquez. 19 innings, 15% strikeouts, a 1.89 ERA, but a 5.98 xFIP. The xFIP, I promise, is the more honest number. 5.3% barrels, 2.5% home runs. I don't really see any need to start Randy Vasquez in this spot. Not against the Braves. 4th start of the season. I just can't imagine this going well. 62-68, I don't even think he's a value dart. Not against this Braves team. Even with Albies out of the lineup. Even with Murph out of the lineup. They're just too good. This team loses those 2 players from this lineup and still plays at least 1 through 8. And then depending on what you think of Nicky Lopez. It's just an outrageously talented group. Ronald Acuna is one of the best players in all of baseball. 338, 423, 577. 27 homers, 55 steals, 68% better than average creating runs, pushing the NL MVP. Michael Harris, 4,400, 2,900. I think FanDuel lowered his price after he moved up to the 2nd spot. That's a little silly. That's a great piece of value. Helps you pay for the top of the lineup. And the Braves are actually a little gettable in full stacks today, given only 3 of these guys are super expensive on DK. And then you get to Ozuna at 43.27. You get Rosario at 37.28. Darno, an excellent backup catcher with starting catcher caliber power. If he got 450 plate appearances, 400 plate appearances, he'd be one of the leading power hitting catchers in baseball as a starter. He has done in the past. He's an excellent option at 4,200, 2,900. 108 WRC plus, 9 homers and 203 plate appearances, a 200 ISO. He's not Sean Murphy, but he's a good, when like you fax something and then you refax. Well, nobody out there gets fax references anymore. What the hell am I talking about? Has anybody out there ever made a photocopy? You make a photocopy and then the copy of the copy. Has anybody seen the movie Multiplicity where they talk about that concept? Because the 3rd copy of the Michael Keaton copy isn't quite as good. That's what we could be dealing with. It's like, or it still looks like the original. It's just not quite as good. I think Travis d'Arnaud is an excellent option. Orlando Arcia, 4,000, 2,700. Great option. Too cheap on FanDuel. 112 WRC plus for the season. 13 home runs. 285, 344, 47. Just been going to that guy at the bottom of the lineup all year long. And then the other 2 expensive guys up at the top were Austin Riley and Matt Olson, the best options at their positions for power in all of baseball. 29 homers at 3rd base for Riley. 43 for Olsen to lead the league with a 343 ISO to go with it. Just a dynamite squad up and down. I'm sure they'll be popular against Randy Vasquez. I think it's totally worth going to. They lead the slate for projections and home runs, second in FanDuel points per dollar, fifth in DK points per dollar, given some of the discounts today. Really like getting to the Braves against my Yankees here. So Braves bats with a bullet. Charlie Morton. Yankees bats as a minor value-based position. I do think you can roster it. They'll be in the mix. Like, I don't want to say that they're not, given how they rank out points per dollar. I will have some, but they're not a priority for me. They'll just work their way into the mix. If I have like 5 teams owned ahead of them, I'll be happy about that. If I get 7 teams owned ahead of them, I'll be even happier. I think they rank out, mid-board priority at best. Braves top of the board priority. You play the Braves kind of like you play a Coors Field situation if you want. You can look at their ownership. They're obviously very expensive and difficult to get to. But just play the ownership game. Make the decision, all right, I want to be above or below that excellent spot that's an excellent spot basically every day. And let's hit the Angels. Halfway through the slate. Coming up on 5:02. Oh, push that over under. I don't know. We probably got lineups here. We got the Angels, okay. Mickey Moniak in the leadoff spot. This looks pretty close to what was projected. Eduardo Escobar sneaking into the bottom of the lineup for the Angels. This one's kind of a middle pitching situation on both sites. This one could get interesting. I think both of these pitchers do have talent. I think both of these pitchers do have enough talent to shut down the opposing team on the right day. You get Reed Detmers at very good value pricing, $8,000, $7,200. You get John Gray at $6,900 on DK. That's an excellent value price and I think he's at least a mandatory piece of the DK puzzle, if nothing else, given how he projects, given how the Angels have kind of scuffled along. We've failed twice in a row now with going to Angels bats against a Rangers pitcher. Probably going to be right back there for some of the points per dollar available on that one tonight. But I do believe in the John Gray side potentially succeeding a little bit. He hasn't exactly been pitching up to form. Only 20.8% strikeouts this season, 25.7 last year, 24.4 the year before. 3.65 ERA, but a 4.33 xFIP, 7.9% walks is okay, but not great. 5.5% barrels, though, 2.65% home runs. The idea would be getting some clean innings out of him. He finds his strikeout upside against a free-swinging Angels team, and he just keeps the power away from all of these guys and that guy, and this guy does what he does. That's your John Gray path to success, really. I do think it's there for him, particularly at the DK price. A good enough pitcher over time that I think he's got more upside than might be suggested. Well, this is probably okay in terms of the suggestive nature of the upside, because I do think there's quality on the Angel side of things. Mickey Moniak in the leadoff role, 4,200, 2,900, 12 home runs on the season, down to 283, 314, 510. He was outrageous to start the year. Obviously was going to cool and has cooled a little bit in terms of the average, but the power is very real from the left side of the plate. A 121 WRC plus overall, a 227 ISO, 13.9% barrels. I think at price, he's easily worth getting to, and he's got the best correlated scoring spot in baseball ahead of Shohei Ohtani. 354 ISO, 41 home runs, 17 stolen bases, a 180 WRC plus. You play Ohtani on any given slate against basically any pitcher. He's very expensive. He's very worthwhile. If you're building out Angel stacks, this price just is not a high price anymore once you start just averaging it with all these other guys. The 9-man average for the Angels stack is $2,700, or call it 28 on FanDuel. 9-man average on DK, call it 38. Very cheap. If you want to talk key hitters, I would go those two, him, and him. Maybe I don't take Moose. Well, they're the same price, so either Moose or Renfroe. Your priority bets have an average salary of $4,100 on DK. Or lower if you're going to other guys. Or slightly higher if you include Grichuk from the 9 spot in that. So I think they're very good for value. Okay home run marks. Good power through the season for a lot of these guys. Good mid-range righty power at least. They've got a few lefties in the lineup today. Obviously with Ohtani, with Moniak, with Mike Moustakas, who has come back to life somewhat. 268, 328, 451, 183 ISO, 11 homers. He's never going to be the big time home run hitter that he was a few years ago. Probably not. I shouldn't say never, but probably won't get back to that level. But this is better than I thought he was going to be this season. So respectable enough for cheap hitting cleanup, first base and third base eligible on both sites. Rengifo, shortstop on DK, triple position on FanDuel, good sneaky power when he's late in the lineup. Matt Dace, lefty catcher power, 2,600, 2,200. Little bit of realistic upside, 7 home runs in 279 plate appearances. Not great in the ISO, not great in the WRC+. And then the run of Renfroe, Eduardo Escobar, and Randall Grichuk. 3 quality veteran bats. Escobar is a switch hitter, the other 2 are righties. Renfroe's been stuck at 17 home runs for a long time now, down to a league average 100 WRC+. I will still buy Hunter Renfroe at these prices. He's just a massive power hitter when he's going right. He hasn't been going right, that's the problem, but he's cheap for his upside. Grichuk's been having a good year. The power's there. Triple slash is there. Escobar's not really having a good year, but at least he hits from both sides of the plate. He's got multi-position. More valuable where he's got second base eligibility for only 2,200 on FanDuel. First and third on DK. A little less valuable from a pretty inconsistent guy. Formerly a good power hitter. Switch hitting power hitter. Just last year, 20 home runs and 542. Year before, 28 and 599. Just hasn't been a regular this season, and I think maybe that's cost him a little bit. He's just kind of in and out of lineups. 27.8% strikeout rate for Reed Detmers on the season, but a 5.27 ERA, a 4.08 xFIP, a 9.3% walk rate, declining over time. He's allowed 14 earned runs in his last 2 starts. Not that we're just game log hunting in those, but he's got a kind of a run of shorter starts, giving up a handful of runs in each one. In those 2 starts, he gave up 3 home runs and struck out 4 against the Mariners, allowed 2 home runs and walked 3, struck out 0 in just 2 1/3 innings against the Astros before getting yanked. Has not really pitched a good game, like outstanding game, a slate winning kind of a game, since late June. His xFIP in July was 4.34. His strikeout rate was still good, 29.7%, but had a 9% walk rate. In the 2 August outings, he's a 7.73 xFIP and a 10.8% strikeout rate. That's against tough opponents to some degree, but he should have had more strikeouts against that Mariners team. Again, I don't like to just specifically game log hunt like that. That's not why we're talking about the recent run. It's more the short outings that have concerned me a little bit. 2 of those he obviously got dinged, and that's why he came out. But he had a couple short starts before that where he wasn't pitching that bad, and was a little bit lacking in the innings depth. Overall, 107 2/3 in 21 starts. He's got an okay projection. Obviously, on the value board, 8,000, 7,200. He's got a ceiling, but he's also got one of the tougher matchups on the board. The Rangers are just good. They're good against both hands. Against lefties, they've been good. They are the 4th ranked team by WRC+ against left-handed pitching this year. The active roster's got a 125 WRC+, 21.3% collective strikeout rate against lefties, a 178 average ISO. A little bit rough. It's not just about the speed bumps that he's hit lately in terms of Detmers. I think a little bit matchups based, a little bit not full faith in the ERA numbers, the premium contact that he's allowed on the season. Fly ball oriented pitcher with 42.2% hard hits, 90 plus miles an hour of exit velo, and a 3.61 home run rate, going up against a team with 132 home runs across the projected lineup, including a 0 from one of these guys, and including only 8 in 183 plate appearances from Mitch Garver. That's a lot of home runs. Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Nathaniel Lowe, Adolis Garcia, Mitch Garver, Jonah Heim, Ezekiel Duran, all those guys are very playable. It's a very playable 1 through 7 for this lineup, depending on what form it takes. Did we get it in the last couple of minutes? Not yet. So I think top to bottom, they're basically playable. I meant to fix JP Martinez, and I forgot when I got all sidetracked with the data. Let me pull him up again real quick. JP Martinez, middling kind of a prospect. Speed. Had 12 home runs, 33 steals in 308 plate appearances at AAA this season. He's a 27-year-old, though, so playing at an advanced age for that level. By the time you're 27, you should be, you're either at a AAA or you're just a quad A type talent. So that's probably more the case with JP Martinez, but he's 2,500, 2,300. If nothing else, he helps offset some prices at the top of the lineup, so you can mix him in. Leody Taveras has come down a little bit recently. He's at a 99 WRC plus, over 408 plate appearances, 11 homers, 11 steals. All his production from the 9th spot in the lineup. He's a very playable part for mid-range power, speed, some correlated scoring, a decent wraparound back up to Semien and Seager. Seager's had like a pretty awesome season, 191 WRC plus on the year and 349 plate appearances, 22 homers, a 315 ISO, slugging 666, the mark of the beast. 350, 410, 666 overall. Just ridiculous. 19.6% barrels, 57.3% hard hits, among the best contact profiles on the entire slate. Seager's a superstar shortstop. Nathaniel Lowe's cheap for what he's done on the season, 279, 369, 448, 28% better than average creating runs, 14 homers. Productive guy for 4,500, 3,400 at first base. Adolis Garcia, 5,400, 3,700, 30 home runs on the season, a 258 ISO. Throw him with the contact that Detmers is allowing. I kind of like getting to the Rangers side of this equation a little bit here. Ranking it out, I'd probably go Rangers. Tough call. Rangers, John Gray value, Reed Detmers value, Angels. All four corners are in play in this one, though. I think you can take actual shares of either side of the bats, especially given with the pricing on the Angels side of things. And I think you could take legitimate shares of either one of the pitchers with at least a little bit of faith. But again, it's a very deep pitching board, so you don't want to sacrifice too many shares of that top 4 or 5 guys to get to your John Grays and your Reed Detmer shares. It could be an ownership differentiator for sure. Either one of these guys is capable of posting a big enough game to win you a slate at price. But you got to get the bats right still. Their ceilings are a little bit more limited. They're in tough spots for both of these guys. Chi Sox, Mike Clevenger, Cubbies, Javier Assad. Remember when I said we could skip over some of these pitchers? Here we are. 3.55 ERA, a 5.46 xFIP on the season for Clevy, 19% strikeouts, 78 and 2/3, 15 starts. I don't see it. I don't see the depth. I don't see the quality. I think the Cubs are going to get to him here. I like the Cubs bats, as you guys know. They're one of my leading stacks on the day. They rank out just kind of in the middle of the board. 8th ranked projection is the exact middle of the board. 9th for points per dollar value on FanDuel. 12th for DK points per dollar. But a 3rd ranked home run mark. I kind of like that. Clevenger hasn't been filthy for home runs in the small sample this year. 3% is, average-ish kind of a rate. 8.1% barrels. Last year in a more complete sample, 4.12% home runs on 9.5% barrels. Only 18.8% strikeouts, 4.33 ERA, 4.76 xFIP. I think Clevenger's reputation as a guy who was once pretty good is even a little bit overblown. Where was his career peak? I know he's been injured a ton. He's 32 at this point. His best season, probably 200 innings that year. I mean, his only complete season is 2018 when he threw 200 innings. He struck out 25.6%, had a 3.86 xFIP and a 3.02 ERA. That's probably his best year. 2019, he was pitching really well, but only made 21 starts ultimately, 126 innings. That was the good version of Clevenger that year, 33.9% strikeouts. That's a really good start to that season. Had only a .71 home runs per 9, 2.71 ERA, 3.09 xFIP. Most of these other seasons, though, incomplete samples. You got to give him an incomplete grade in a lot of these years. But lower end for strikeouts than I think a lot of people expect. Higher end for home run upside than I think a lot of people expect. Not great. He's okay. I'm not saying he was never talented. Obviously, injuries just completely derailed what he might have been. But it doesn't really give me... This is the picture I said we were going to skip, right? It doesn't really fill me with warm and fuzzies. If you want to throw a couple $5,700 darts, if you're a Clevenger fan, if you got one of his old jerseys at home hanging in the closet, and you want to put it on tonight and sip some whiskey and watch them lose to the Cubs, go for it. But it's not a spot for me. Javier Assad, 6,400, 6,000. Projects as an okay dart throw as a value going up against the low-end White Sox. I don't really have much faith in it. He did go 7 okay innings against Toronto. He allowed 1 run on 4 hits. Only struck out 2 and walked 1, though. The 7 innings are encouraging, obviously. That's what you're just looking for, some innings out of this guy at those prices. Against the White Sox, he could give you innings and not give up too many runs, too many hits, too many walks. Maybe he finds 2 or 3 strikeouts along the way. That's the kind of start you're booking for 6,400, 6,000 with Javier Assad. Doesn't really lead me to White Sox bats just because of how bad they've been overall. Let's see if we've got the lineups. We've got both lineups. Timmy Anderson and Andrew Benintendi in the top spot for Chicago, or for the Cubs, or for the White Sox rather. Dummy. I got it wrong twice. Well, I got it right the first time, but there's 2 Chicago teams in this game, so that didn't really help. And now I just dropped the White Sox lineup into the Cubs. I gotta take a minute to unwind the stupid here. Hold on. Now they're not copied. One of those days. To continue just talking about the White Sox lineup while I eventually drop it in here. Anderson and Benintendi have been really, really flawed all season long. Both well below average for run creation. No real counting stats to speak of. Not getting on base as much as they should. No homers. No steals. No real value. 58 WRC plus and an 89 WRC plus to start off the lineup. You can go to them if you're inclined to roster White Sox, but you've also got Noel Jimenez, their second best hitter, in the lineup today. He's on the bench. So you've got Joan Moncada hitting cleanup. That's a flawed option. 3,000, 2,500. He's very, very cheap. He's in the right spot in the lineup, but he hasn't delivered anything this season. 234, 282, 361, a 75 WRC plus. And in seasons past, only 12 homers and 433 last year. 24% below average creating runs. Year before, 14 homers. This was a good season on 122 WRC plus, but hasn't been that guy in a minute. Andrew Vaughn, now their second best player in this lineup, behind Luis Robert Jr., 5,239. Maybe you just take some Lou Bob one-offs in this spot. 32 homers, 16 steals, a 140 WRC plus. Vaughn does give you competent right-handed power, 15 homers on the season. 175 ISO, though, not a major source of power, just a competent one. 9.3% barrels illustrates that. It's an okay to good barrel rate, but it's not a star caliber barrel rate. Gavin Sheets, Yasmani Grandal, Elvis Andrus, Oscar Colas down the bottom of the lineup. Very, very limited options. Maybe pushes the idea even a little bit more of a clean game for Javier Assad. I still think the strikeout upside is very limited for Assad, but some clean innings, he might get there. Value darts at most for Javier Assad. If you're going to the White Sox, one of the 2 guys in the top spot, probably not both. Then Luis Robert, Joan Moncada, Andrew Vaughn, and take your pick of the mix and match options at the bottom. Not great. Cubby side, I'm a lot more enthusiastic about. A lot of good run creators here. Through those top 8 hitters, the average WRC plus is 119. Average WRC plus through the top 8. Apologies to Tucker Barnhart in the bottom spot there. Average on base percentage for that group is 350. This team is good at sequencing. They're good at creating runs, getting on base, helping each other out. Tauchman and Horner off the top. Horner's still a little overpriced for my taste. Second base and shortstop helps with that at 3,600 on FanDuel, 51 on DK, second base only. It's a little bit of a tax, but he's got 30 steals, a 104 WRC plus. Plays really well in conjunction with the rest of these guys. If you put him together with either Tauchman, who's cheap, or Ian Happ, who's way too cheap, you lower his price just naturally through averaging it down. Happ, 363 on base, 13% better than average for run creation, 14 homers, 9 steals. Decent contact profile for a guy who costs this. 9.2% barrels. I know I just said about Andrew Vaughn that 9.3 was, just average to decent. That's what Happ is. Average to decent contact profile. Bellinger, home run pick of the day at 10.54. I forgot to mention that at the top of the show, or maybe I did and I forgot that I said it. Only 10 guys on this slate above the magic number for home run power. Brings us to 2 of them in this Cubbies lineup. Brings us to a good point to pull up the home run board real quick. Make sure we get everybody included. Runs changed a little bit. Come on. So these 10 guys. That's it. Above the, as far as above the magic number for home run power. Now Juan Soto sitting right at it. Kyle Raleigh, Kyle Schwarber, Julio Rodriguez, Manny Machado, Corey Seager, Mickey Moniak, Mookie Betts. All those guys are pushing similar type numbers. But it's a light day for power. It's a really deep pitching slate. I think this is a good way to illustrate how deep the pitching slate is. Remember yesterday, this thing went all the way down through there with guys over 10. So just very, very different kind of a slate. But Belly was the overall home run pick. I almost went with Chris Morel, but then I was like, let me grab the lefty. Why not? I like Cody Bellinger. I'm hoping he's a Yankee. Hoping we push him up to his 19th home run of the day, or of the year. Hell, let's get to 20 tonight. 20 home runs by the end of the night for Cody Bellinger. 325, 377, 551. Even if he doesn't homer, he's got a strong probability of being an excellent option in the heart of that lineup. Dansby behind him, underrated shortstop for power, 18 home runs on the season, 191 ISO, 14% better than average creating runs. Gets on at a 338 clip. Decent season for Dansby. A little bit of a downturn from seasons past, but I think he gets to his home run totals if nothing else. Chris Morel, 4,600, 3,400. Too cheap on both sides, multi-position on both sides. Heimer Candelario, 4,700, 3,300. Probably also too cheap for a guy with 17 homers, 218 ISO. A pretty good contact profile. Actually, no. I'm sorry. My eyes jumped to Chris Morel. That's actually a weird contact profile for Candelario. Given the 17 home runs, the 218 ISO. So another one of those guys who turns limited contact into decent power output when he makes contact. Seiya Suzuki hit his 11th home run of the season last night, 102 WRC plus, 255, 331, 412. Should be better than he is. This is a good contact profile. 9.2, 48.7, the 48.7% hard hits, 24.9% strikeouts. I was expecting him to be a little bit better than that for strikeouts, show a little improvement over last year's 24.7. He hasn't really, but the walks are in place. He gets on base in an okay clip for a guy that's this cheap down the bottom of the lineup. And then you get to Tucker Barnhart. So it's, an 8-man stack. You can throw in a cheap catcher on the DK slate. He's got one home run, a .056 ISO this season in 121. Hit one last year in 308. Hit 7 the year before in 388. That's what you're chasing if you're chasing Tucker Barnhart shares. But at least 1 through 8, I'm going to prioritize some of these Cubs. I like that spot quite a bit against Clevy. So it's Cubbies way up here. White Sox kind of limited, especially with no Eloy Jimenez in the lineup. No love for me for either pitcher, but if you're going there, I prefer the Javier Assad side, just throwing darts for value at this White Sox lineup. I'll jump into the chat and I'll see who's defending Mike Clevenger. Stephen Leibowitz says he's okay with Assad. He's been functional. I think functional is all right. Why would anyone own a Mike Clevenger jersey? Yeah, it's beyond me. Maybe when he was a young kid coming up with Cleveland. Travis Wyndham's here. He's rewinding now. He's got a long way to go before lock. Chuck thinks that Detmers is going to get blown up. He's also hoping not to get pulled over, which is good. Oh, he's hoping that 8 Game doesn't get pulled over. 8 Game's texting, driving, and listening to Terry. What could be better? As long as you're not drinking. Texting and driving, not great either, but it's just not add a fourth factor to that. All right. Let's get this. You have to see the inside the park home run by Siri. Wow. Jose Siri? I didn't see it. I like the LA lineup too, but they just underwhelm so much, says Trey. Yeah, that's definitely underwhelms. Burnt me 2 days ago. Burnt me again last night in smaller shares. They're just tough. There's just a lot of hitters that I really believe in over time that leads me back there as their prices keep on declining. It's so easy to keep going back there. And then they get the superstar boost from Ohtani. One second. What's going on here? Clevenger against in his lefty righty splits that somebody mentioned. Trey mentioned. Let's take a look. 159 lefties have 7 home runs, a 223, 314, 439 triple slash. 175 righties have 3 home runs, a 258, 320, 390 triple slash, 326, and a 311 WOBA, respectively. If we look down the boards, his xFIP against lefties is 6.37. Against righties, it's 4.60. His strikeout rate against lefties is 16.47, 21.7 against righties. Mixed bag against both hands, really. Gives up more power to lefties. Strikes out a few more righties, but none of that is numbers you're really looking to chase. There's not really ceiling numbers. It's not like he's striking out like 30% of righties and 5% of lefties. That would be a really weird split. I don't love the option for Clevenger. It could be Travis says, hey Tara, how does it feel knowing people would rather rewatch your show than listen to the other 2 sites doing live content? That actually feels pretty good, pal. I appreciate anybody who wants to do that. definitely there's all the kinds of good content out there. Like I said, I don't dislike those other guys, but hey, that feels great, and hopefully we're providing some good information and leading people to some good decisions and some good wins out there. All right. So this one, Luis Castillo, dominant option on the board. We've got both of these lineups in too. Definitely going to miss the 5:30 target, but we'll be out of here at an okay time. We can breeze through the Royals situation on the mound while I get these lineups. The Royals have James MacArthur acting as an opener. He's going to be followed by Alec Marsh. Everything in the board that we're going to be looking at is geared against Marsh. It's not a situation where I would roster either Royals pitcher. The Mariners are definitely in play again today, showing decent upside for power, pretty good upside for run creation, for fantasy point projections. They are the 4th ranked team by fantasy point projections, 7th by home run ranks. Alec Marsh ranks 16th out of 16 pitchers on the pitching board, and the Mariners are pulling the top points per dollar mark on both sites. So Mariners bats are pretty much a priority again here. And then Luis Castillo, 9,600, 10.5, projects near the top of the board. I forget if he was first or second, but right up there at the top of the board. He was third. It was Paxton, Snell, Castillo. But again, the top 4 are separated by a 1.5. So we're not really worrying about which one's which. You just take whichever one, or you take them all in pretty high doses. I love the matchup for Luis Castillo. 28.2% strikeout rate on the season, a 3.14 ERA, a 3.61 xFIP. He's given up a little bit of weird contact, 10.4% barrels is high, 43.6% hard hits, and pushing nearly a 4% home run rate. That's been his primary flaw this season. Otherwise, the strikeouts are at 28.2 are great. The walks are fine at 6.2. The whip is outstanding at 1.03. He's got an excellent swinging strike rate, one of the better marks in the league at 15.4%. He's going up against the Royals, who are unlikely at best to exploit the home run issues, the blips that he's had there. So I just love the spot. I'm going to have a lot of Luis Castillo, I think. Ownership might kick it down a little bit, but for price, he's one of the best options on the slate. Full stop as a pitcher. If you're going to Royals bats, I would want to try and grab the power hitters to try and get to some of these blips for power. I would take probably just these 4 guys and then whichever other options you want. That's where the power is. It's kind of obvious when you look at it in this format. Just look for the home runs, look for the okay ISOs, and hope for the best. Bobby Witt's your star. He's your top priority bat. 5,500, 3,900, appropriately priced as a star caliber player at shortstop. 23 homers, 34 steals, 118 WRC+, 219 ISO in what was originally kind of a down season, and just over the last 2 months has become an outstanding season. Garcia gives you an okay hit tool, decent speed, okay option to correlate with these guys. He'd probably be my first man in after the power core. You just take like a straight line 1 through 5 if you're on DK. Mike Massey, okay lefty pop, 2,800, 2,300. At least he's cheap at second base. He does have 10 homers, but only a 143 ISO, 24% worse than average creating runs. 230, 282, 373. Not ideal. Sal Perez, down this year. 19 homers, a 183 ISO. That's good output for a catcher, don't get me wrong. But when we're talking about a guy who hit 48 home runs 2 years ago, had a 211 ISO with 23 homers last year, maybe he gets to the home run total, but the ISOs, that's a pretty big dip in ISO overall for this hitter. So not a great season from Sal. He's only 3,900, 2,600, so I don't want to take him down too far because his price has come way down from where it would normally be. So he's a perfectly fine option if you're building stacks of Royals. You just don't want to like one-off Sal Perez against Luis Castillo all that many times today, I don't think. Cue the Sal Perez double down. MJ Melendez, lefty, all this premium contact that we always talk about, this lack of output that we always talk about. At some point, that's going to mash together like continental plates and create a mountain, and hopefully it's a mountain and not a chasm. Let's put it that way. Hopefully the home run output goes up. Hopefully the ISO goes up. 227, 301, 382. I don't really expect much triple slash improvement over time with this hitter. 9.1% walk rate is okay. The 28.4% strikeouts are pretty high. Maybe he improves bat on ball skills a little. Maybe he draws a few more walks. But I think he's really a sellout for power type over time. But I do expect more power from this lefty. Beatty, Waters, Velasquez, and Isbell, mix and match options at best. Beatty's giving you a 101 WRC plus over 37 plate appearances. Nelson Velasquez is at 145 and 47 with 5 home runs on the board. I'll believe it when I see it from both of those guys. And then Waters and Isbell both below average for run creation. Mariners side of things. Like I said, one of the higher priority stacks for me on this slate going up against the opener-follower combo. I really like the spot. I really like Julio in the leadoff role. 9.42 in the home run model. 19 homers, 28 steals. A lot of the counting stats looking like last year. The WRC plus is still down. The on base is still down. Some of his skills are not quite where they were, but the counting stats, the things that we primarily care about for DFS purposes, are still very much intact. 51.7% hard hits, not the least of which. Junior Suarez, 17 homers, a 104 WRC plus, only a 158 ISO from a guy who's hit 31 home runs each of the last 2 years. 4,100, 2,700, cheap power at third base. Ty France, cheap option at first base. A part of stacks, definitely somebody you want to include. 10 home runs on the season, a 108 WRC plus. Just wasn't as good as the hitter that he's been over the last 2 years. 2 years ago, 291, 368, 445, 29% better than average. Last year, 276, 344, 37, 27% better than average with 20 home runs. So a little bit of a downturn for France, but if he's cheap and hitting third in this lineup as a priority stack, he's going to be in a fair share of my Mariner stacks. Teoscar, Cal Raleigh, both flawed hitters in terms of their strikeout rates. Teoscar doesn't walk nearly enough for his aggressive strikeout rate. He's a power hitter with a high strikeout rate who doesn't get himself on base enough via the walk. 250 average, if he could walk even like 8%, his on base would get up over 300. He'd be a little bit more valuable. 100 league average WRC plus as it stands, but 3,600, 2,600 for his power. That's a bargain. Cal Raleigh didn't get our home run yesterday, but comes right back with a 9.18, 20 homers on the board at 219 ISO. Excellent switch inning power option from behind the plate. Then you get Marlowe and Canzone, both cheap prices, 3,400, 2,600 for Marlowe, 2,624 for Canzone. 2 home runs apiece, 59 and 78 plate appearances. We take these samples with a grain of salt, but both guys have put bat on ball fairly well and delivered at cheap prices already. So I think we can go back to those lefties at the bottom of the lineup for cheap. Jose Caballero's gotten on base at an okay clip this season, creating runs 1% better than average, 21 steals, a moderately interesting wraparound play for 21 at second base on DK, a little bit more interesting for 23 triple position eligible on the FanDuel slate. And then Josh Rojas on this team now, 3,100, 2,400, slightly better than what Colton Wong was giving them at the bottom of the lineup throughout most of the season. Definitely not as good as Josh Rojas has been in the past. Not as good as Colton Wong's been in the past, but a little bit more than Wong was giving them earlier this year. So a playable mix-in part, I think, at worst. Multi-position eligible, 3,100, 2,400. We've seen Josh Rojas be a better player than what he's been this year. So Luis Castillo, firmly near the top of the board, one of my favorite options on the mound today. Mariners bats like right there with him as far as their potential at the plate today. Moderate. Not even moderate, like minor shares of Royals as a hedge position, maybe around some of those lefty power bats, plus Bobby Witt, plus Sal Perez. But it's a really low end option, low priority, and then no interest in the Royals pitching. Padres lineup is in. Looks like the usual top 5, plus Jake Cronenworth, Gary Sanchez, Ben Gamel, and Trent Grisham. So slightly different than what's on the screen. I like it when Gary's in the lineup. I'm a sucker for Gary Sanchez. Wish he never left the Yanks. I know he's not a good defensive catcher, and I know the reason he's probably not on the Yankees is more just because they knew that Giancarlo Stanton was going to need to be a full-time DH or most of the time DH, and they wouldn't just have room for Gary's inability to really be a good, reliable, everyday catcher. I would love to have him as a DH. Still think he's got a major league caliber power bat. 16 home runs and 219 plate appearances for Gary Sanchez down here at the bottom of the lineup. It's pretty good output. 282 ISO, 16% better than average, creating runs in his small sample. 15.4% barrels, 45.5% hard hits. If you're building Padres stacks, don't leave Gary out of them too many times. I think you can build Padres stacks against Dean Kramer here. 7,100, 8,000. He projects out pretty decently, though. One of the stronger value plays on the slate. On a slate that's pretty short on value plays, especially on that DK price, 7,100. That's one of your better low-cost, decently projected value options. He's got a really difficult top 5 to navigate, but then he picks up a little bit of quality in the bottom 4. So I think it's a playable enough spot. He's got a 21.4% strikeout rate, a 4.50 ERA, a 4.46 xFIP, and a bit of a home run problem. So Kramer's not great, but given the short nature of the slate in terms of value, given what you're going to need to do on DK, I think he's definitely on the board. 4.46% home runs and 10.2% barrels, 43.7% hard hits. Not ideal for a guy that we're looking for as a value play. I definitely think that leads me to some Padres stacks, and I probably get to more Padres than I do Dean Kremer on either site. Fernando Tatis sitting at a 10.96. Juan Soto was the 11th ranked man on that home run board that only had 10 guys above the magic number. One of those guys was Tatis. Manny Machado also chasing that mark, and now that Gary's playing, he's also chasing that mark. So this team has pretty interesting power upside on a slate that's a little bit short for power. In the version of the lineup that didn't have Gary in it, they were 4th ranked for home run potential, 3rd ranked for fantasy point projections. That pushes the home run potential up a little bit. Where would that rank? Can I get to that easily here? They would jump to... Granted, I haven't changed any of the others, so it might be unfair to some other team that I didn't realize. They would jump to 3rd, replacing Campusano with Gary. Not that Campusano is a bad power option either behind the plate, by the way, for cheap. So Padres for me, open with Ha-Seong Kim. Great option off the top of the lineup. Multi-position eligible on, or triple position eligible on FanDuel. 285, 377, 446. A second baseman only, but easily playable at that position. Not like he's stealing a spot from anybody else in this lineup when you put him there on DK. So perfectly playable across both sites. Has been excellent. 31% better than average creating runs. Very good for counting stats. Getting himself on base really reliably at 377 ahead of this core. That makes him really valuable. Tatis is a superstar. Juan Soto's an even better superstar. I'm a sucker for Juan Soto. You can go back and forth debating the quality of those two, but Soto's got more home runs in more plate appearances, obviously. Fewer stolen bases, but a way better on-base percentage. Bigger ISO, way better run creation mark. They hit for the same average. Soto's got a 57.7% hard hit rate and a 12.9% barrel to Tatis's 11.2 and 49.8. I'm taking Soto. That's my guy. Whatever we can do to bring him to the Yankees, as I keep saying. Just want to keep putting that thought out into the universe. Put that energy out into the universe and bring Juan Soto to the Yankees. Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, both still underpriced. 51.44 on DK, 35.29 on FanDuel. Machado's got himself up to 21 homers, a 200 ISO, a 111 WRC+, 254, 319, 453. Starting to look a lot like himself. And oh, by the way, Xander Bogaerts creeping his way back up. 272, 346, 401. 110 WRC+, 12 homers, 13 steals. Starting to look a little bit more like Xander Bogaerts of years past. Last year he was really good. 307, 377, 456, a 134 ISO. Year before, 295, 370, 493, 130 ISO. Or 130 WRC+. This version might be slightly out of reach. Definitely out of reach for the power. But he's stolen more bases this year. Am I looking at the right spot? Yeah, I am. The average might be reachable. The on base, probably not. But if he has a really strong final month and a half, he could get to the average and the on base number at worst. But it's not a totally dead season for Xander Bogaerts, and they've got him priced like it kind of is. 4,400, too cheap for his talent on at shortstop on DK. 29, way too cheap on FanDuel. That is a bargain. Jake Cronenworth's been mediocre at best this season. 95 WRC+, 10 homers, 6 steals, 488 plate appearances. He's a mix-in value for cheap pricing at first base, second base on both sites. Gary I like. Ben Gamel and Trent Grisham mix-in lefties for cheap pricing from the bottom of the lineup. Playable from 1 through 9, really. Even Gamel and Grisham, if you're building a lot of Padres stacks, I wouldn't exclude them. Gamel's 2,200, 2,000. Trent Grisham's a productive enough guy. 94 WRC+. 11 homers, 12 steals over the course of the season, 3,100, 2,500, playable enough. Not priorities by any means, but they're playable 1 through 9. Blake Snell, top of the board, or second on the board, whatever it was. 10-1, 10-6, great projection, 31.3% strikeout rate, second best strikeout rate behind Gausman on the entire slate. Walks problem, but it doesn't really cost him all that frequently. It's weird. Walking nearly 14% of hitters, you would think he would have a worse ERA, a worse xFIP. You would think that he would have some issues. Even the whip is not that bad for that high a walk rate at 1.28. He's just outstanding at pitching his way out of trouble in most cases. 14.9% swinging strike rate helps that a lot. 30.3% CSW. Doesn't really give up power at 2.38% home runs, 86.7 miles an hour of exit velo, and only 32.3% hard hits. Blake Snell's a terrific pitcher, and he's actually been working somewhat consistently deep into ball games. 130 innings and 24 starts. It's not tragic. Even with the inefficiency, it's not terrible. See how many times he's gone? 6. One, two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So half of his starts, he's gone at least 6 innings. Very good strikeout numbers in all of those. A lot of other 5-inning starts in here where he's just, giving up a couple of runs. Those are usually the higher walk starts, right? Like one of these starts, July 20th at the Blue Jays, only struck out 4, only allowed 1 run on only 5 hits, only went 5 innings because he walked 7 hitters. That's what you've got to duck when you roster Blake Snell. Last time out at Arizona, struck out 7 of a fairly stingy Diamondbacks team, walked 4, allowed a home run, 2 earned runs on 2 hits, pitched 6 innings, faced 22 hitters. So even if he's walking 4, he's typically getting that 6-inning threshold. 4, when it combines with a lot of strikeouts, might cut you down to 5 innings. There are inefficiency issues. Like, he's not one to come out here and pitch too many complete games or anything like that. But given the high strikeout totals, getting Blake Snell on the right day, I think he's firmly at the top of the board or near the top of the board in that mix for price. If you're going to Orioles, I definitely want to prioritize Adley Rutschman off the top of the lineup. 15.2% strikeouts, 13.1% walks. If we're looking for guys who might frustrate Blake Snell given what they do at the plate, he's the top of the list. He also fills a dynamite value at 4,800 for catcher on the DK slate. Picks up more plate appearances than most other catchers by virtue of hitting first every day. Ryan Mountcastle, Anthony Santander, Austin Hayes. Some good bats from the right side against Snell here. Good righty power from Mountcastle, okay righty power for Hayes, and a pretty good triple slash, good run creation marks. And then Santander has been a very good switch hitting power hitter for several seasons now. 21 homers at 215 ISO on the board this year in 492. Jordan Westberg, righty hitter, 3,300, 2,500. Cheap premium prospect when he came up 126 plate appearances ago. 2 home runs, 3 steals, a 104 WRC plus, 271, 317, 424. Very, very playable. Apologies that Ramon Urias is not showing on the board. This is I forget where the accent is in his name. He might have a dual accent. This is the stats board. This is the other thing that... it's Julio. There we go. See this little O? I don't know if you guys can see that. You can't. When Fangraphs made their changes, they also went in and added the accents to everybody's names again in the stats board. So that's going to require me to either make a massive naming table that accounts for every accent in the league, or I have to change this every time. I have to go in here and say, all right, copy this O with an accent, go on this thing, find and replace it with a regular O. It's a giant pain in the ass. And as you saw, there were 44 of those in there. When I did it for the E with an accent on it, it was like 200 of them. Granted, there's 4 spots for each player, but that's going to be a lot of pain in the ass work if that sticks. They've done it in the past and then taken it away, so I'm hoping they just take it away again. But there's Urias' stats now. 309 plate appearances, 4 home runs this season, 132 ISO. A mid-range guy. Decent power output in years past. 16 homers in 445 plate appearances. Not a priority bat, but one of those guys that's just like a 5% owned sneaky mix-in when you're going to Orioles stacks. Easy enough to get to. If you get Hicks, McCann, Mateo at the bottom of the lineup, this becomes fairly limited in terms of their ability to turn the lineup over, their chances of success against Blake Snell when you're talking about Hicks, when you're talking about McCann, even with his acumen against lefties. It's pretty limited if this is the bottom end for the Orioles. I do think we might get a shot of getting Gunnar Henderson into the lineup. They've been giving him more shots against fellow lefties of late, so maybe you get him in there. Mateo at least gives you speed if he manages to get on, but he's been stuck at 25 stolen bases because he's only got a 257 on base percentage. So just that outrageous first month of the season is going to be the story of Jorge Mateo this year, unfortunately. Looked like a superstar that month, but completely fell off. So it's top of the lineup as priorities, like 1 through 5 with 6 as a bolt-on part for the Orioles, and then really thin mix and match options. Hopefully they put out a better version of this lineup. Blake Snell, priority pitcher. Padres stacks, pretty good priority spot for bats. I think you can mix in some Dean Kramer shares for value, more particularly on DK at 71, but he's on the board on the single starter side at 8. Just a limited ceiling, I think, against the pods here where, how many times is Dean Kramer going to go out and outpitch all of those aces? Outpitch relative to price, all of those aces. We need a very good game from Dean Kramer at price to get to that level. At a certain point, it does become about raw fantasy points. Last game on deck, 545. Love it. Okay, Brewers, Dodgers. Anybody planning on rostering Wade Miley here against the Dodgers? I am not. I know that he's got a 2.90 ERA. This is the real number. 4.78 xFIP. The expected mark for things that the pitcher can control is always what I want to look for, especially when it's a guy like Wade Miley showing a weird mark like that 2.90 ERA. Last year, 3.16 in 37 innings, but a 4.42. Year before, 3.37 and with a 4.07. This was an okay year. Only 18.1% strikeouts, 7.2% walks. This is your ceiling. This is your best version of Wade Miley that you're going to get. It's pretty low end. He's got an okay ability to limit power. I will give him that. 85.7 miles an hour of exit velo on average 2 years ago. 86.7 last year. 87.6 this year. The barrels have gone, they were fine these 2 years. They've gone up a little bit this year. 32.6% hard hits is still very good. 2.88% home runs, a little higher, but it's a small sample this year. 15 starts, 77 and 2/3. Just a low-end pitcher. He's there to book some innings for this team. I don't know. I don't see it. It just falls into the category of why. On such a deep slate, why? Even for value, why? Against this Dodgers team, why? I just don't want to do it. Not a spot in my mind. Clayton Kershaw, on the other hand. Like I said, top of the show, 75, 80 inning, probably, 80 innings. Woo, that would be a big score. 75, 80 pitch count, I would imagine. 9,900, 10-8. I think you can squeeze this kind of a score from him, between 30 and 40 on the FanDuel scale. I don't know what the ceiling is going to look like, though. That's the problem. He's an excellent option. 27.5% strikeouts, 6% walks, 3.26 xFIP, 2.51 ERA in 17 starts and 103rd innings. Just hadn't pitched before this most recent start since the beginning of July. Came out, gave us 5 innings. It was that start against the Rockies where we were all excited, like, hey, even with 5 innings, Clayton Kershaw against the Rockies with how bad they are against lefties. He gave up a solo shot, 3 hits, walked 0, struck out 4. Wasn't exactly what we were looking for. Almost got to enough value in that spot where it could have paid off. 2 more strikeouts and not giving up the home run would have been enough. I think he's got that kind of potential. 6 Ks and a clean sheet in 5 innings. It's not nothing, but I think the ceiling is capped. That's where you run into issues with Clay Kershaw. So out of those guys that projected at the top of the board, while I do agree that it's a believable projection, I think he's got a much lower ceiling than any of those other options. So that limits my exposure, but I also think it limits the field's exposure. So when you're talking about very low single digits type of ownership for Clayton Kershaw, it gives him a little bit of a nudge forward. Have some, but not a lot, I think is the plan. Dodgers, I think we can get to a lot in terms of their bats. They project out very, very well. They ranked... Oops, I forgot I opened these columns up. They ranked 6th by collective fantasy points, given some Miguel Rojas down at the bottom, dragging down the average, and Enrique Hernandez dragging down the fantasy point projection average. They're probably a little bit better than that overall. You've also got a decent amount of power, obvious star power here. Let me fix Will Smith. Just take the relief pitchers out of the player pool FanDuel. Make life so much easier. No lineups yet in this one. So on the Dodgers side, now that we've got Will Smith's matter sorted out, 5,700, 3,600, an excellent option at catcher. Guy who puts the ball in play like crazy. 15 home runs on the season, 272, 376, 466, a 131 WRC plus. Strikes out at a 15.7% clip, 12.9% walks. Him and Adley Rutschman are just 2 outstanding catchers given what they do in this category, or in these categories. Putting the ball in play and drawing walks. That gives the catcher so much more value, particularly when they can hit for good average and good power like Will Smith and Adley do. Really like both of those options. Really like Will Smith in Dodger stacks. Obviously hitting behind the two superstars, good position in the lineup. Mookie, dual position on DK, triple position on FanDuel, 62.44. Freddie, 61.43. I don't think I need to sell either player. A 159 WRC plus for Mookie, a 167 for Freddie. If Freddie isn't the next guy on that MVP list behind Acuna, it might be Mookie. I mean, those guys are pushing that race a little bit here. They're excellent. JD Martinez, 5,100, 3,400, major source of right-handed power in this lineup against all the contact that Wade Miley's going to be allowing, even with his ability to kind of limit power over time, given that he's allowing a little bit more barrels, a couple more home runs in the small sample, and given the 17% strikeout rate, that just means there's going to be bat on ball available. Why not take one of the best options for contact profile on the board at a fairly affordable price, 5,100, 3,400? 25 homers, a 297 ISO, and just 379 plate appearances this year for Martinez. He's been excellent. Came roaring back to life. Ahmed Rosario, interesting mix-in part in the middle of the lineup, at the bottom of the lineup, at the top of the lineup, wherever he lands. I still think he's interesting in this lineup. He's cheap. He's at a position that doesn't really conflict with other guys, or if you're talking about Mookie, you've got multi-position on both of them. I don't really worry about his positioning. I think he's got good upside that's not necessarily revealed through the projections, more through the skill set and what we've seen this kid do on the field over time. So I think he's an interesting option that may not project great and may not land in a ton of people's lineups, which gives him a little bit more value. Max Muncy, I think, might go a little bit underappreciated lefty, and he's got no issues with lefties, and he's got no issues at all with this lefty. 278 ISO, 120 WRC plus, 28 homers on the season for only 5,600. Sign me up for some Max Muncy sneakily at the bottom of the lineup. Chris Taylor, multi-position eligible, 38-26. Tons of power in the split against lefties. 12 home runs on the season, a 197 ISO overall. Definitely a good option against the lefty. And then Miguel Rojas, pretty low end overall. Enrique Hernandez, fairly low end overall. Between the two, I prefer Enrique. Third base and outfield on DK. Second base, shortstop, and outfield on FanDuel. You get a little bit of value out of the cheap pricing and the multi-position eligibility, but he's not been nearly as good as he's been in years past. I do think you can grab a few stacks of Brewers. The issue is, if you're talking about Kershaw coming out after 5, no matter what's going on, how often are we going to win a slate with half a ball game, right? We're only going to if we're going to get 4 innings out of the Brewers where they're not facing Clay Kershaw, we have to make the assumption that Clay Kershaw is going to come out here and pitch effectively, or a reasonable approximation of what Clay Kershaw should do in this game. That takes the bats out of the hands of these guys quite a bit. So it really limits my interest in the Brewers. They could get to Clay. There's no doubt they have enough talent to get there. But it's a limited lineup that I don't stack up all that much outside of like a value play when they're against a lousy pitcher. So I just don't know how many times I get here. I really like Christian Yelich off the top. Even against Kershaw, he's perfectly fine. 289, 376, 462. Doesn't have a ton of support in the lineup, though. Contreras has a good lineup position. Another guy who gains plate appearances just by virtue of hitting second as a catcher. Gives you a little bit of value. He's got a good hit tool, 273, 344, 441 in the triple slash. Better than average run creation. Okay power. And then things kind of die on the vine. You've got really inconsistent power, inconsistent overall and inconsistent power from Willy Adames. 18 homers is good. 175 ISO is not great. 34.9% hard hits, not great. 12.3% barrels is pretty good. 202, 288, 377 is not good. 20% below average, not good. Mark Canha, Tyrone Taylor, Brian Anderson, Joey Wiemer, Andrew Monasterio. Is this where we really want to make our stand in half of a game? I don't love it. If you're going there, I do think Canha's playable. Cheap veteran righty, a little bit of pop in the bat. 99 WRC plus on the season. Monasterio, 112 WRC plus in his first 179 plate appearances, a respectable triple slash. Wiemer, good counting stat output, infrequent contributor, but good counting stat output at the bottom of the lineup. Tyrone Taylor, very cheap, sneaky power option. Only 4 homers in 122 plate appearances, 178, 197, 322. And then Brian Anderson, I think he had all these home runs before like May 15th. Maybe he's hit 1 since then. Because this is the priority. Finding out when Brian Anderson hit his last home run is what we should be focused on with 6 minutes before 6 o'clock. We're at the end of the show, basically. Brian Anderson has not hit a home run since June 14th. And before that, it was May 24th. So he hit his 8th on May 24th, his 9th on June 14th, and has really done nothing since then. Very limited option. Cheap. Can put bat on ball. Not great over 348 plate appearances. Dodgers bats. Clay Kershaw like talent darts, but with the idea of a very limited ceiling. He could get to 40 FanDuel points. I'm not, or a little bit higher, just based on the strikeout upside. If he happens to pitch 6, we could get the quality start. I just don't think he's getting there. I do think that he's got excellent win upside on the DK slate. I think he's going 5. I think they're going to have the lead. I think they're going to pound Wade Miley. I really like the Dodgers side of this thing. So good win equity, if nothing else, for Kershaw. But more limited than a full start from Clay Kershaw would be, obviously. So it's Dodgers, Kershaw with the asterisk, and then minor shares of Brewers. No real interest in the Brewers bats, given the half game. And then Wade Miley is not really on my value board. With that, we have gone top to bottom on this slate. We can round our way back over to the pitching board. I'll take a quick look. Steven says, I'm not sure Terry's taking a breath in 20 minutes. Yeah, some of these times when I get down to trying to talk through these last ones, the words kind of start to stick in my mouth a little bit. I try and fight my way through it, and that's talking fast is typically the better way for me to do that, just getting the words out. Andrew, interesting point from Andrew. I hadn't looked at this. I don't look too much pitch by pitch, but Andrew says, fun fact, Will Smith is their best hitter against the cutter, and Miley loves to chuck the cutter around. There you go. Larry pointing out that I'm only over by 26 minutes. That's fine. We're having fun. Plus, with only 8 games, the lineups just build faster in the optimizers. It's those 13 gamers when we're pushing like yesterday with, what did we get out here? Like 625 yesterday. That got a little dicey. I ended up running a more limited pool than I would have liked. Not that that's what hurt me. I didn't mean to go here. Wade Miley. Where's the pitch board? 44.2% cutters this year from Wade Miley. 487 slugging percentage and a 507 slug against the pitch, too. It's compelling information. I will take Andrew's word for it that Will Smith hits the cutter really well because I haven't looked into it specifically. That's interesting. 8 game. I slid over to the Stochastic broadcast and asked in the chat who's the hottest 1990 celebrity, and now that topic is taken over the stream. And apparently everyone seems to think it's Jenny McCarthy or Vanna White. Vanna White? That's a weird one. I mean, Vanna's hot, don't get me wrong. But that wouldn't be what I would have expected out of that crowd. Kathy Ireland? It's always one of my faves back then. Jenny was hot. Jenny had her, obviously she's hot, right? But the gigantic fake boobs and kind of Playboy profile isn't exactly what I prefer. Kind of like the Kathy Ireland supermodel profile, a little bit. Yeah, so like Chuck Deuce has just dropped Pamela Anderson, Larry C said Carmen Electra, obviously both hot, but neither one of them really fully hit the mark for me as much as I guess I'd be on the Vanna side of that heads up. Well, that's close, though. That's a weird one. Vanna was never like... I feel like Vanna was like... Maybe dude's like 10 years older than me. It's weird that she's trying to negotiate for what Pat Sajak would have gotten if he hadn't left the show, now that she's the only one. Like, Vanna, I'm pretty sure we can just have the letters turn themselves at this point. Trey says he hates the fake stuff. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Poe DGen knows the movie Unnecessary Roughness. Damn right. Kathy Ireland special. Also, a bunch of bunch of Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue covers back in the day. She was super hot. I'm trying to think though, there's a lot of like actresses from back then that would be on the list for me. I'm just not connecting with the list all that well in my head. We'll get there. I'll think about it. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. Tyra Banks, definitely super hot. I like that call, Chuck. Andrew says, who's my favorite value stack for FanDuel today to pair with the obvious monsters, Atlanta, Cubbies, Texas, etc. So let me get this board back together real quick. I unsorted it before. How about the Mariners? I really like the Mariners. They rank highly for fantasy point projections, but they were the number one point per dollar value on both sites. I think they've got a lot of very capable cheap hitters. The Angels are kind of on that list for me, although I do respect John Gray. I think he's a pretty good pitcher, but a lot of good points per dollar options on the Angels too. And then, yeah, the rest of the top of the board is kind of those really good teams. You get into, I don't love tangling with the Toronto mark. Boston's showing good points per dollar value against Mackenzie Gore, but they're not exactly cheap. It's just like, they project so well for those salaries. The Yanks are showing decent value ratings, but they're the Yanks. They're struggling. There's really, couple decent hitters. Podijan Stoner's into Roseanne Barr. Larry C. with a good call. Tiffany Amber Thiessen from 90210, and before that, Saved by the Bell, which was definitely in my wheelhouse. That version of Tiffany Amber Thiessen is my Tiffany Amber Thiessen, the Saved by the Bell one. That was like right at the right age, all of that. Like we were right at the right age all the way up. But I feel like she went for something a little bit different when she was on 90210. Kind of transitioned into transition's the wrong word these days, but kind of changed her overall look a little bit when she hit 90210 and then after that. But yeah, the original Tiffany Amber Thiessen from Saved by the Bell was one of my girls back in the day. All right, let's talk real quick about this pitching slate one last time. We kind of just referred to some of it obliquely there, talking about the values on the board. But again, these three guys are essentially the same. I really like the value pitching price on James Paxton at the top of the board, but the Nationals are pretty good against lefties. But again, it's as we looked player by player, are they really good, or are they just like a couple guys who have been kind of good this year? I think it's more the latter. I don't want to give them credit for being like the 27 Yankees anytime they face a lefty, particularly not a good lefty. So I really like Snell at the DK price. I like him quite a bit at the FanDuel price, or Paxton rather. I like Snell on both sites. I think he is what he is. Castillo, great matchup for Castillo. Like him better than Snell on the DK slate, given the 96 versus the 10-1. Save $500, go to Castillo in an easier matchup against the Royals rather than Snell against the Orioles. Kershaw is limited by that pitch count. That's the only thing. The projection is real. The projection is correct. The ceiling is more capped. If I had another column over here with ceiling in it, you would see maybe that's something I could do. I got to think about the best way to do that. But he would have a lower ceiling than any of these guys, and probably these guys as well. Similar ceiling maybe to the John Grays, the Reed Detmers of the world, the Dean Kremers, certainly the Mackenzie Gores. But Kershaw is on the board for limited shares, given probably low ownership. Gausman could easily be at the top of the board. He is the same as these guys as well. I see no real difference between this and this. Kevin Gausman's fantastic. Highest strikeout rate overall on the board. Blake Snell was the second highest strikeout rate on the board. I think Castillo after that. Charlie Morton against the Yanks could easily succeed, could easily win somebody the slate for 91.85. First decent price offset on the FanDuel slate. Aaron Nola's right there with him price-wise, and equal opportunity to potentially go out there and pitch well enough to win somebody a slate, given the price discrepancies between these guys and these guys. Talent-wise, experience-wise, career track record-wise, these guys are no different than these guys. Arguably, some of them are better. This year, exclusively, there's been a dip for Charlie, there's been a dip for Nola, but both are very good options at price. John Gray, tough spot against the Angels, not pitching up to form fully, limited in terms of the strikeout rate, little bit of potential, but I will have the other side of that game. Reed Detmers, scuffling of late, going up against a really difficult lineup that's really good against lefties. That gives me a little bit of worry about the Reed Detmers play. I'll probably have more limited shares of Detmers than any of these guys. Not sure how much I get to, but I really like the price, $72,800, projects fairly well, and there is strikeout upside. Just got to really dance through that really difficult Texas lineup. So I don't love the Detmers play. I'll have both sides of that equation. For every Detmers share I get to, I'll probably have 2 or 3 of the Rangers. Dean Kramer's on the value board, 71, particularly on DK. Mackenzie Gore on DK exclusively is a value play. I don't think I go to Mackenzie Gore on FanDuel at 82. I don't know how much I go to Dean Kremer on FanDuel at 8,000. I just kind of prefer these guys. I would probably pay less to go to Detmers against Texas, just given the strikeout ceiling, than Kremer or Gore in their matchups for more money, I think. On the DK slate, given these two guys are less expensive than Detmers, I think they become better value options. Javier Assad is like your extreme dart throw. Maybe you could throw either Chicago pitcher into that. If you like Clevenger, go for it. But for me, I think the idea of clean innings and the matchup plays much better in Assad's favor. I don't expect either side to succeed, but he would be my choice. Gun to my head for Larry. Gun to my head between the Chicago pitchers, I would go with Assad, just based on the much cheaper price on FanDuel. A little bit more expensive on DK, but a much better matchup against the White Sox than what Clevy's dealing with the Cubbies. Randy Vasquez is a no. Wade Miley's a no. The Kansas City pitching situation is a no. With that, guys, now let's see what else we got here real quick. Oh, you're talking about Elizabeth Shue, right? The chick from Adventures in Babysitting and Leaving Las Vegas, as Podijan Stoner puts it. Elizabeth Shue. Also super hot. Also Back to the Future 2, right? Didn't she replace What's-Her-Face in Back to the Future 2? I think she did. I think that's about it, guys. Mamba, is SP2 going to be Kramer? One SP2 share on DK. If we're not just going like high price, mid price with Paxton in that mix, and we're calling SP2 like a below 775 or below, it's probably John Gray. $6,900 John Gray against the Angels. I'd probably go there before I went to Dean Kramer at 71 against the Pods. That's fairly close, though. I just like John Gray. I believe in John Gray's talent, and I've seen it more than I've seen from Dean Kramer. And it projects better, obviously. So it's probably John Gray for that question, but that's close enough. I think that's about it, gang. 606. It's definitely it. Appreciate everybody. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Andrew says Tia Carrere. That's a good answer as well. DK's got a free roll. DGen free roll. In the featured tournament section, I hear. That'll be interesting. Larry C's got 2 tickets to the Millie. Nice. All right, guys, let me punch out of here before I keep on just looking at chat and trying to keep up with you guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe. If you're not in the Discord already, pop in there. Let's populate that thing. Keep the chatter going in there. Love seeing PoDGen's pictures in there, but I love seeing baseball talk even more. So let's build that thing up. Discord's free. The entire website's free. rotoscouts.com. Follow the Twitter handle at rotoscouts. Like and subscribe this. Like and retweet over there. Helps us build up followers, get some more friends into the crowd and into the mix here with us. With that in mind, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me all this time. You guys make this show happen. Really appreciate you. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. I'll see you later.